Viraj, there is a new phenomenon from last year or 2 years, that is AI. What is your view?
First of all, we need to understand what is AI.
बहुत सारे लोगों के लिए फैमिली ऑफिस जो एक न्यू कॉन्सेप्ट है.
Their main focus was to preserve the capital or the surplus that they have created through their legacy businesses and invest into a secured product.
What all are the criterias, or what are the 2-3 things which basically fund houses normally look into a startup?
Important thing is about the promoter. So we see what is their education background, what kind of ethical code of conduct they have.
So what one problem you would like to solve?
The financial literacy. I have seen 2-3 startups where promoters have gone, they understood the benefit of that, and after understanding the benefit, they have started.
So hello viewers, welcome to a brand new episode of our podcast show, that is Sign Up Startup. So today we have someone who has a vast experience in investment field. So please welcome Viraj Patil. Hi Viraj, welcome to our podcast. So how was your morning today?
Yeah, it was very good morning. Our boardroom has got converted into a studio now.
So just a brief background about our podcast. So this is basically for the startup founders, entrepreneurs, and the future the generation who wants to come into business and understand how all these things work. So we basically invite guests who share their insights and specifically who are into the ecosystem. Okay, so today I think we will have a very good session where your expertise and where your insights from the startup ecosystem, which will help our viewers.
Sure.
So starting, let's start with your background, like from how you have started the study and how you have come to the stage where you are now.
Okay. So I come from the engineering background, and while doing engineering only, I had realized that I'm more interested to commercial side of the real estate. So that is where I did my first post-graduation into construction management. First 5 years I worked with Shapoorji Pallonji Group, where we implemented a lot of execution and project management ideas, improved the skills, and then I went into business development of the construction business.
Okay. So बहुत सारे लोगों के लिए फैमिली ऑफिस जो एक न्यू कॉन्सेप्ट है. ओके, बिकॉज लोगों को VCs पता है, वेंचर कैपिटल, प्राइवेट इक्विटी, एंजल इन्वेस्टर्स, बट how family office work and what they actually do, what is the exact concept, they don't know. So just tell us about the whole concept of family office, how they invest, what all asset class they invest.
Okay, so let's go back. What is family office and why this family office concept is now getting shape in India? If you look back 30 years, hardly any family offices were there. Those were the legacy family offices, like Premji Invest. Then Infosys had their family office. In 1991 to 2000, these family offices used to manage only a treasury for their core businesses. But after 2000, we started changing the role of the family office because of two reasons. One, a lot of new age businesses started taking shape after 2000, especially after the telecom innovations in India. A lot of implementation after Reliance came into information technology and entertainment business. Also in chemical, pharmaceutical, manufacturing sectors, a lot of new age entrepreneurs started taking shape. And then the legacy businesses, their next generations, most of the time, are not interested. They are interested into investing into new ideas. They are not interested into taking care of their legacy businesses because it can be managed by professionals also.
Correct.
So that is where the role of family office started changing a direction, and just managing the treasury was not their agenda. Their main focus was to preserve the capital or the surplus that they have created through their legacy businesses and invest into a secured products.
Okay.
So those secured products can be a debt product, or small equity exposure products like mutual funds or alternatives. And from last 15 years, there is a third phase that we have seen in a family office where the family office invests into a lot of startups today.
Okay.
They have a generation, maybe a second or third generation. So they are having more risk appetite. So now family offices are having their own AIFs, own startup funds. So this is how in India, the family office concept has started taking a shape. And in few cases, we see that second or third generation has sold their businesses and they're sitting with the cash. And they are now just doing investment job. And that is where they are having the family office.
Okay.
So we have seen the role of the family office also getting changed from last 30 years.
So now coming to the startup related topic, where you are also part of a fund which invests into startup. So this is a very common question, though may differ from fund to fund. But what all are the criterias, or what are the 2-3 things which basically fund houses or the general partners or whoever running the fund normally look into a startup before investing in the startup?
So first and foremost important thing is about the promoter. Sometimes it can be a single promoter, sometimes 2 promoters, or it can be a bunch of 5-6 people who have come together and started a business. So we see what is their education background, what is their professional background, what kind of ethical code of conduct they have through various referral checks that we do.
Okay.
So this is our first layer of investigation.
Okay.
If someone passed that, then we get into what is the business model that he has. Whether the business model is scalable or it is his idea only limit to 5 to 10 kilometers around his brain. So that is the second factor. And third is about whether he can create a multiple channels of revenue or not.
Okay.
Because in our existing portfolio of 10 companies, we have seen almost 50% of companies have either changed the business model or have created 3-4 more verticals in the business.
Okay.
To create futuristic cash flows.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you have only 1 or 2 streams of cash flow, businesses get stuck after reaching to certain level. So these are the 3 main things that we look into any start.
Okay. And when we talk about promoter or founder, so is educational qualification is important? Because normally we have seen that graduates from IIM and IITs, they get funding very easily. Whereas if someone coming from a middle level college, they face a very hard challenge to get the funds. So why it is such that the qualification play a crucial role from the point of view of VCs?
Okay. So it depends on a VC. If you ask me particularly as an individual, which college you are passed out from is not important. But what kind of environment you have got exposure to,
Okay,
is more important. Now, sometimes exposure is there, but person has not dwelled himself into that environment. Then what is the use of being even from the top B school or top college of engineering? So, what kind of exposure that person has got and what he has also dwelled into is more important. Only a best college or a best rank doesn't matter as far as we as an investor are concerned. Yeah, but sometimes I have seen, a person from a top B school like I am and all, they get easily attracted by the investors. But ultimately, what remains is the idea, not the college degree.
correct.
After 3 years.
And what is your view on startup ecosystem of India? Because we have seen from last 2 years specifically, number of startups have increased multiple times due to the Shark Tank India season 1, season 2, season 3. People watch on TV. They think that it is so easy. Just go and ask for funding and you will get fund. I think that is one of the main reason. But I will like to know your point of view on a startup ecosystem, that how it will grow at least for 1 or 2 decades coming.
So let's go back 30 years, 1991 we started liberalization. That time, first 10 years, the most of the benefit was taken care by the legacy businesses or IT companies from 1991 to 2000. From 2000, we started seeing a buzz in a telecom market.
Okay.
Where Reliance came into business and a lot of prices started declining. And in 2005 onwards, we have seen a digital transformation in India.
Okay.
That is one of the biggest reasons why we have seen startup ecosystem which has got evolved. And if you ask me, last 10 years particularly, a lot of government stability is there, first of all. Second, government policies are reshaped in the favor of new age entrepreneurs, where they can present ideas, they can get a funding from government or even from the private bodies through various platforms. And this is one of the biggest reasons where fundamentally we have grown as a startup hub. But there is another flip side to it. There are a lot of entrepreneurs who are not clear what to do, and just to try and test, they sometimes start some startup with anticipation it will get absorbed at larger interest, but it doesn't happen over the period. And then they realize that this is not working, let's move to something else. Sometimes people get into FOMO mode, that fear of missing out, that some of my friend has started something, let me also start. So that is another flip side. And as an investor, our duty is to look what is the objective of the guy who comes to you as a startup entrepreneur. Whether he really has identified a problem, has a scalable business model with the solution that he has, and a good team to grow and scale the business model across India.
So, Viraj, there is a new phenomenon from last 1 year or 2 years, that is AI. So, कोई भी कुछ भी कर रहा है, AI ऐड करके बोल रहा है मैं स्टार्टअप कर रहा हूँ. तो what is your view on this, that how AI is going to replace the jobs or the way we are interacting or working in day-to-day lives?
First of all, we need to understand what is AI. People are generating some softwares just by creating a search engines or some statistical tools and naming themselves as a AI engine. That is not a fact. AI business has to be thoroughly researched. There has to be a lot of data. There has to be a lot of libraries to be created, examined, tried, tested, and then you can label yourself as I'm into AI space.
Okay.
Just creating some filters, just creating some engines, some statistical business model or financial model doesn't mean that you are into AI. So that is my first take on these entrepreneurs. Don't fool investors. Because a lot of people come over here that we are doing this into HR management, we are doing that into supply chain management by doing AI. And when we ask them to present their product architecture, they even can't show us any product architecture. When we ask them to show their AI engine, 90% time we don't see any AI engine. It is hardly a statistical filtered Excel or any tool that they have got from open sources.
Yeah.
So these are not AI. AI has to be a proper 3 to 4 years of study, running the libraries, creating your own sources. But that is lacking. Only 1 out of 10, I can say, are really working into AI.
Do you think it is a threat?
I don't think that is a threat, because a technology which eases the way of life is always adopted in India. I think there is no other country as far as India is concerned that is best in terms of any adaptation. So I don't think AI has actually started taking a shift. It is just introduction today. When we will see a rapid absorption of AI, we will see a new job opportunities will create.
Okay.
Whatever jobs we have today, I don't think out of 10, more than 5-6 jobs will even exist after 10-15 years. So what these people will do? These people have to develop a skills to get a new jobs or new skills.
Correct.
Which is after 10 years required. They have to start getting acquainted from today. So I don't think AI is gonna create any threat. In fact, that will create a new job opportunities. That will create new business models. That's my opinion.
So now I will ask you the fundamental question. Like you mentioned that the new age skills needs to be developed among students, or at least after 10th or 12th. In next 2 to 3 years, they should develop these kind of skills. When most of us knows that this is important, then why still our education system is into that traditional old school way? It has not yet changed. What is the challenge you think that coming?
So there are 2-3 challenges. One, whatever growth we see, whatever business model analysis we do, happens most of the metro cities in India, like where the investor community is there. But if you go beyond 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers from these main metros, the reality is different. There people still don't have basic bank accounts. They still don't know what is SIP. They still don't know what is EV. For them, something running on electric is like going on a Mars. So you need to understand holistically where we are discussing this.
Yeah.
If we are discussing this into metro, then you may see that our education system is far behind, like 20 years back. But if you go to rural area, it is irrelevant to them. So we need to understand in which context we are talking. Second, change doesn't happen overnight. It takes a time. Last 10 years, we have seen a lot of changes. Now, this year onwards, new education policy is getting implemented. And absorption of that will happen another in next 10 years. So, children who are now getting into nursery or first level will actually see the output of new education policy after 10th or 12th of there.
Okay.
So, at least we have started taking new direction. There is no situation like there is no guideline from the government. Guidelines are there in place. Now, it takes time. You can't change everything overnight.
Okay. So my next question will be, suppose you get a chance to start a startup, run a startup. So what one problem you will like to solve, which is around us on a day-to-day basis, or anything which you think that this is a problem and this needs to be solved, और अभी तक किसी ने किया नहीं है इसको solve?
I don't think that you need to be innovator if you want to start anything. But a problem which we need to solve, according to me, is about the financial literacy.
Okay.
And health. Because I, even though come from the metro background, I've seen people in metros also who don't know where to save their money, where to get the funding from, what are the cheapest avenues that are available in the market for their own various financial requirements, what are the medical challenges that can arise in anyone's life. If any challenge happens to them, who can give them a helping hand, which hospital can help them, which insurance company can help them, or which mediator can help them with the most effective manner in terms of cost and quality. So according to me, I think financial literacy and health management are the two areas where I would like to work. There are a lot of startups and a lot of wealth management companies who have identified this already, and they have started working now in Tier 2, Tier 3. But there is still a huge scope for financial inclusion and health management. So these are the two of my favorite spots to work in.
So coming back to some, your personal life questions, that how you manage your work-life balance. Is there anything like stress kind of thing? Because normally, I don't know, I may be wrong, but in family offices or in funds, the people who are working, sometimes they get very an absolute level of stress.
Yeah.
So is there anything applicable to you, or you are like living your life on a very comfortable manner?
Okay. So let me talk first in a generic and then into a specific way. People have various challenges today, especially after Corona. Few are having health challenges, few are having financial challenges, few are having insecurity as a challenge, few are having peer pressure as a challenge, few are having social layers as a challenge, especially after Corona, because we have seen people dealing with people in different manner in last 3-4 years.
Yeah.
How you get accepted by the people in terms of your knowledge, your social background, in terms of your culture, is something people are really struggling today. And priorities have changed. So that's my generic observation. And you need to find what is the accommodative environment for you to work. If the accommodative environment is not there, then that is natural reason behind your negative stress. Okay. So that's my generic opinion, that you need to find what is the right environment for you to give your valuable time at, whether it's a family or professional. So I enjoy the work which I'm doing, and sometimes it is a positive stress.
Yeah.
So you need to identify what can make you happy. If you are happy with the work, then positive stress is good. But if you are not comfortable with your work, if you are not enjoying, then it turns into a negative stress, which sometimes you have option to change also. Sometimes it is not in your hand. You have to deal with it.
Yeah. When we are talking about stress, I will go off the topic. Like, I know you have done this Vipassana course.
Yeah.
So this is off the topic also, but how was your experience on that? First question. And second question, do you think that anyone having stress, maybe is a founders or any person in this ecosystem, they should also go to the Vipassana and start Vipassana?
Yeah. So before getting into Vipassana, let me tell you what is the aspect of Vipassana, which even I was not knowing before going for the Vipassana. Okay. So a lot of people are doing a lot of meditation, yogas today to manage their stress levels. And sometimes it is continuous on a daily basis, sometimes it is a monthly basis, sometimes it is just on a Instagram yoga day basis. Okay. So you need to decide what routine you are doing. Then it comes what kind of meditation you do. So Vipassana is one of the type of meditation. Okay. It's not yoga. It is not a ritual. It is not any religion.
Yeah.
So for me, these three are different aspects. What you do at home is your ritual, which your family is doing from the ages. Second, what is your religion? As a society you do. And the third is a meditation. That is for yourself. So for me, going to Vipassana was only one objective, that I want a peace for 10 days. Because in Vipassana, you switch off your mobile and there is no connect with the outside world. And that was my only motive. But when I finished my Vipassana, I realized that there is a larger objective to it. You get to know the connection of mind, body and matter.
Okay.
So, as you rightly asked, what was your experience? That was the only experiential journey I had so far in terms of my spiritual journey is concerned.
Okay.
Because I have done a lot of courses before Vipassana in terms of meditation, yoga. through various institutes. But this was the first time where I did the experiential experience. Otherwise it's always intellectual talk
Yeah.
that gets bombarded on you, and you get inspired, and that inspiration remains for 2 days. But to remain continuously motivated, you need to have a self-discovery and a pattern which can keep you happy. So happiness is a state of mind. People often find it outside, but it is actually inside.
Yeah.
So for me, Vipassana was the experiential journey to transform myself on various fundamental grounds, to find mistakes in you, to correct you. You need to give yourself a space, and you have to find the link between mind, body and matter.
You do
Yeah.
daily?
Sometimes it doesn't happen on a daily basis, but most of the time I do. And I would always recommend a person, whether he comes from any religious background or entrepreneur or normal professional background, to at least go once. Understand the technique. To do or not in future is your choice. And I have seen 2-3 startups where promoters have gone, they understood the benefit of that. And after understanding the benefit, they have started giving free facilities or sometimes paid leaves to their employees to go for the courses.
Okay.
So I would always recommend someone to go understand the technique. If it doesn't work with you, it's okay. If it works with you, it can create various avenues for you in terms of personal plus professional growth.
So yes, in today's podcast, we learn on many aspects. Like you mentioned, from starting from family office, then how VCs operate, what was their thinking, then also in the end, this Vipassana thing. So this was a great session with you.
Thank you.
I hope you also enjoyed this podcast. So viewers, this is it for today. In next episode, we will again come with a new guest who will share their insights and which will in the end help you to grow your startups and build a scalable business.